I'm very excited because, team and I, we have spent the last couple of months really talking to experts like Naveen and asking them, like, what's hot right now? Because we didn't want to do this conference with like a preset schedule. So we asked a lot of people, what would you want to see on stage? And that's how we put the program together. And the one topic that was on everybody's top list were bots. And we came across so many great minds to discuss this with that we decided to spend the first hours of this day around bots. And we're going to have a panel on building them and a panel on making money with them. The panel building bots is the next one. And I'm excited to bring 5 people on stage that have been working with bots on very different angles. First one is Marah from Shine Text. Hi Marah, you just made it. Thanks for being here. Jake from AM Chill, David from Dexter, Max from Spectrm, and the moderator, Roger from Genacast Ventures. Please come on stage. And please speak in the microphone like this so everybody can hear you.
I'm from the Midwest, so I'll speak a bit slower than the previous panelists. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's a privilege to moderate this panel. Quick intro on myself. My name's Roger Chen. I'm a principal with Genacast Ventures, which is a seed stage VC fund in New York, as well as Philadelphia, focused on B2B tech investments. And my interest in the space really starts around 2 years ago. So for a quick show of hands, how many people here are familiar with chatbots or know what I'm talking about when I say chatbots? Okay, so that's like 80% of you. 2 years ago, that number would have been practically 0. A year ago, that number would have been maybe 10 of you. And so it's amazing to see how quickly this space has really exploded. I guess maybe we can start with a quick round of intros. I know we don't have a ton of time for this. I want to save some time for Q&A with the audience as well. So maybe we'll keep it to a 30-second elevator pitch, if you will. Jake, do you want to kick us off?
So I'm Jake. I'm the founder of AM Chill. AM Chill is a friendly bot that gives you amazing movie recommendations in seconds. To use us, you just message in with a movie that you like and why. And then from there, we give you a couple spot-on options. So right now, about 75% of our users are saying that their picks are extremely relevant to them. And we spend a lot of time sifting and sorting through Netflix every day, reading descriptions and reviews and kind of making that decision on what to watch. We look at ourselves as the ones that can actually make the decision for you. And if you were to go and try to make the decision yourself, hopefully we can know you just as well to pick what you would have picked if you were to know about it. So.
Thank you.
I'm David. I work at a company called Dexter. We launched out of the beta workspace about a year or so ago. And unlike, I think most of the other companies on here, our product isn't like a bot per se, but like it's a place where people come and build bots. And it's part of our fundamental philosophy that building a bot should be easy and accessible no matter who you are, and especially with regard to like whether or not you know like how to code. And so when you really think about it, these conversations, these sort of like dialogues that people are creating on chatbots, they look and feel a lot like a movie script, which like anybody can kind of write. And so our approach to bot building is, if you can write a movie script, or if you can write in general, you should be able to build a bot, and you can do it on Dexter.
Hey everyone, I'm Marah. I'm the co-founder of Shine. It is an intentionality company. We're using messaging on Facebook Messenger, Kik, and the mobile web to help people build their best lives. We actually recently, last week, also launched a component that allows people to connect one-on-one with a life or career coach over text messaging. So we get really excited about the combination of messaging, bots, automation, NLP, and real humans to help people build the lives that they want to live.
Hello, I'm Max. I'm the co-founder of Spectrm, and we started last year on WhatsApp, and in January we built the first content bot in the world on Facebook Messenger, and right now we are a platform which enabling publisher, media, and entertainment to build bots and distribute their content into all kind of messengers, starting from Slack over Facebook Messenger and so on.
Great, thanks. And maybe to begin with, just to level set, I think the scope of what is and what isn't a chatbot has been the subject of debate for the past year or so. There's a whole bunch of articles arguing, this is the scope, of chatbots or invisible apps or whatever you want to call it. So for the sake of this conversation, my definition for this is really around this new paradigm of user interaction. So what we've seen to date, a lot of the popular interfaces on mobile and web have been in the form of buttons and forms and visual UIs. And this new sort of paradigm is all around conversational user experiences. And I think that is driving a lot of very innovative thinking in how to build applications that people are interacting with that are novel and better, in this new medium. So my first question, to the panel is, how do you think about the conversational UX versus the visual UI, the pros and cons of both? Why build a bot versus a web app? David, I think you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of people come to us to build bots, and so I feel well positioned to answer this one. So it's funny that you bring up this. You're talking about UI, right? One thing that is interesting to think about is that what's a classic piece of UI that on the web or your phone? It's like a form, right? It's like a text box, and then you input information. It goes to some server somewhere. The service does something for you, and then it comes back, right? That's kind of how a form works on the web. A chatbot literally is just text box and text you put in that goes somewhere, and then it comes back with useful information, right? So, I think that when it comes to why, or first of all, on that side of it, right? The UI really isn't that much different from what already kind of exists, right? And then to your second part on kind of why people might want to think about building a bot. For us, most of our users and customers, already have an existing kind of product or service that they offer, and they're using bots as a way to reach new or existing customers on a brand new channel, right? And so, so the way that we kind of think about it is is there any sort of discrete process you want to guide your users through, right? Is there some data you want to capture? Is there some way you want to prove value to a customer on a brand new channel, or even without having to download an app, right? For example, with and Chill, there's no app to download, no thing to sign up for, right? You just kind of open up Facebook, you start talking, and then you prove your value right away, right? And so that's definitely one of the angles that we find for when people think about why they should build one, right? There's no need to download anything at all.
Gotcha. And so Jake, do you guys think about it in those terms? It's just more frictionless for users to begin the engagement with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes further than that. I think with the conversational medium, we're gifted with the most natural medium of all time. I mean, it's basically human conversation. Everyone is very used to it. We do it every day, texting our friends. We take a different approach when it comes to buttons, when it comes to kind of having to say something in a particular way, because we think that is outside of what is meant to be in the conversational medium. So I mean, for us, we want your experience to be as natural as possible. We don't want you to have to kind of think about what you have to do when you come into our experience. And we've purposely designed our experience to be very focused. You know what the value is when you're getting into it, and it doesn't take you 80 messages to get to that value. You know, I think it's been interesting with the buttons in specific, because I feel like we're just superimposing buttons from the web, which I don't really feel like is going to be the future. I think the future is going to be just say what you want and then you get it. And that's really what we're doing with and chill, and it's one of the reasons why people have been responding so well to what we're doing.
Yeah, and I do want to get to the buttons and the format a bit later when we talk about the technology. But I guess sticking on the theme of the philosophy behind bots, you know, one of the interesting things for you know, bot users and consumers in this new space is they're trying to figure out, you know, the capabilities of this bot, right? And so in some ways it's a fun and delightful experience. In other ways, you know, maybe it's used strictly as a utility. Would love to get your thoughts, Marah, on sort of the balance between bots being a strict utility versus something that is more playful, that can engage in more kinds of conversation.
Yeah, I love that question because I do think it's a really interesting time right now where there's a lot of friction between the user problem that we're solving and this like bots, this cool new thing, bots, right? I think right after F8, bots had their Google Glass moment where everyone was like so pumped about the technology, but not necessarily starting with what is the user problem that we're solving. And you know, so I've actually been in the text messaging space for about 5 years. You know, previous to messaging apps allowing brands on their platforms, what was exciting is that previously at DoSomething.org, we were able to grow out a list of 3 million young people engaging in multiplayer text messaging games. You know, all kind of viral experiences using text messaging. And a big part of what we learned, kind of to Jake's point about the fact that this has been around for a long time in terms of messaging, is that the one key feature that it isn't even a feature itself, but the benefit of messaging is that it's personal. Nobody else is in your inbox in the way that your friends are in your inbox, and you don't check your notification tab the same way that you check your inbox, your messaging inbox. And so I think in terms of it being a utility versus something for entertainment, there's a plethora of possibilities, as long as you're really coming to that user like a friend and you're talking to them in a way that they want to be spoken to. So for us, I think we think less about you know, of course, we're always thinking about what features we can add to enhance the user experience, but we think less about which features do they want, and we think more about what are they dealing with today? Like, what is the new problem today that they're dealing with, and how can we, for us, be a utility to help them? For us, it's, you know, de-stress, set an intention for the day, and again, kind of get that path to self-actualization.
That makes a lot of sense. And you know, one of the things that as a seed stage investor we think a lot about, you know, in this space is where consumer demand is versus where, you know, developer excitement is, and what the market timing looks like. Where are we, you know, exactly on this consumer adoption curve or the B2B adoption curve for chatbots? And so I guess you know, the next question is, you know, is for any of you. You know, why now from a you know, a development point of view, and you know, why build a bot now versus, you know, why weren't these things built 2 years ago, and where do you think we are today on this adoption curve?
I can try to take a stab at that. Well, I think now is interesting because you see all these platforms starting to open up, right? Like you mentioned at like F8 earlier this year, like. Facebook had like a large sort of like unveiling of their new kind of like bot platform, and so like instead, like you definitely want to be ahead and you know, be one of the first. You know, while like a lot of people say that discovery is broken right now, right? Where it's hard to find new bots. It's like a very crowded space on Facebook, on Slack, things like that. And so, you know, it's definitely good to kind of like get ahead, and you know, while they're still figuring it out, you know, if you're one of the more popular, successful ones, you kind of like automatically get the coverage on these sort of platforms. So I really think that one of it is these platforms kind of opening up. I think a second part of it is like if you follow this space a lot, like it's certainly a stat that you see often, but you know, when you look at the monthly active users of the like top 4 messaging platforms versus the top 4 social networks. Recently, the amount of users on top of these messaging platforms have actually eclipsed those of social networks. And so you're kind of seeing this convergence of both the platforms opening up as well as more people engaging on these platforms, which is kind of like this perfect storm of why you should be thinking about reaching new people through these mediums.
Max, given that you guys are essentially like a bot messaging CMS in a way, I guess the same question for you. Why now? Could you have built this business 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Certainly SMS is not new. Certainly Messenger is not new. And so what is it in your opinion for you guys that says now is the time to build this business?
I think right now it's the time, in addition to that, the technical abilities we have today, which are improving very fast, I think right now is the time for brands to figure out what you want to do there. If that is a channel which will grow in the future very, very fast after I think the discovery is fixed, I think the bots, the number of users will grow extremely fast, and as you already mentioned, there are so many users on these messengers. So as a brand, as a publisher, I have to find my voice there, because probably it's funny to get a recommendation from a chill in a very friendly way, colloquial way, but maybe if I'm a bank, I want to do the same on Messenger, but probably I need to find another voice. And I need to find what is also, the product market fit there. I can do messaging and chatting is so human-centric that you can do everything there. Or you think about you can do everything there. But not everything is solving a problem, and not everything is fitting to your brand. So I think right now is the time to figure out what you want to do there and how this space is developing, because it's developing very, very fast. So if you are as a brand or as a company an early adopter, I think you learn a lot right now, which helps you in the future very much to stay ahead. 2 years ago, I think that was not possible because right now we have, as you said, a developer-driven, it's so far developer-driven and not user-driven, but I think a lot of companies and a lot of publishers already noticed that this is the future, but I think 2 years ago that was definitely not the case.
Gotcha. And I guess moving on to the building of bots from a technology point of view, there are a number of messaging mediums that exist today where folks are building bots, right? So clearly Slack has opened up a sort of whole new channel to reach enterprise users via bots. Messenger has thousands of bots, mostly useless. I think even Facebook has admitted to this. So there's quite a lot of noise across a variety of different channels. I would love to get the take from the panel on your view of each of these different messaging mediums, what they're most useful for, the types of users that you would try to engage with in each of these, and maybe your thinking and strategy for your companies.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about these new platforms, and to your point, Max, about platforms opening up, is that it gives us access to a whole new audience and a whole new set of demographics. And so obviously brands for years were trying to get into WhatsApp because this #1 app around the world just had this huge critical mass, massive international markets, but they couldn't get in. And so it was really exciting with Facebook, I think, to now have access to a plethora of people, but particularly young people on Facebook and Kik, I would say, is what gets us really, really excited. Is these are some of the still fastest growing channels, and the fact that we have access to a whole new demographic where they are and also where their friends are and where they're also used to kind of going every single day. That's what gets us excited.
Got it. And so would you say that it's really driven from the platform side? So WhatsApp was never opened themselves up for bots and never opened up like a bot gallery app store like Facebook has. And so you think, I guess, the platforms are the drivers for where the developers are moving towards?
Yeah, I think the user base on the platform really matters. So if you're building an enterprise solution, if you're building a solution for professionals, Slack is an incredible channel, obviously. The discovery is really hard, but if you're finding ways to get in other ways where you're reaching that demographic, they're going to go to that platform to utilize you, right? So I think it's very much driven by the demographic and the types of people that use that platform in terms of kind of what strategy you want to have for which platform you choose.
I think I can tell a little story that this week, because we started with WhatsApp, and WhatsApp there's no official API, so you have to hack it somehow. And we did this, and we worked with a few publishers in Germany, where our company is located. And when we were starting and just publisher, we're putting up, hey, you can sign up for a newsletter on WhatsApp. The people went really, thousands of users in a few days were on WhatsApp, because for them it was obviously very, very convenient to get this into their WhatsApp inbox instead of a mail newsletter. So that's how we started. After we did this and we had a couple of publishers on board, and we started, no, probably we can hack the Facebook Messenger as well. What we did then in December, and then in our test group was some guy from Facebook from the Silicon Valley, and then they told us, oh, that's a nice technology, that's a nice approach. Maybe we should work together, and we can build some tool for publishers. And that was actually the start. So it is actually user-driven. So that so far the bot discovery is not that good, and there's not so many users on the Facebook Messenger bots. I think that's just a matter of time, because the user demand to get content in a new way is definitely there.
I'll tell you another funny story around WhatsApp specifically, and like really honing in the point that like it's where the users are, and that's why people are building on these platforms, right? So somebody recently who started building a Facebook bot on Dexter, previously they had a WhatsApp bot, and then we were like, oh, how did you build that, right? There's like no API, it's not really open. And then after a bit of back and forth, we realized that it was literally just somebody responding like on her phone, like to everybody writing in and using that broadcast feature, right? And so, but like she really wanted to reach that audience that was on WhatsApp. And so it's like, think a lot about where your users are, if they're a little younger, you might want to think about Facebook or Kik, things like that. If you're going into the enterprise, obviously Slack is a place of choice, but like it's really all about like which one of these platforms are your users, on already.
So you brought up an interesting point there, which is that behind a bot there has to be some instrumentation, whether it's an AI or whether there's humans behind it powering it. So maybe to dive into the technical weeds a little bit, behind any bot, I think ultimately if you want to scale your bot to thousands of users, millions of users, you can't ultimately have a human behind each interaction. And so natural language processing, advancements in machine learning have really been, in my opinion, a big catalyst for enabling all of these bots to come online. So I guess would love to get a response from the panel around when thinking about building value for your bots, or if you're not a bot company, in the companies that you support. How do you think about the balance between building technology in-house to do some of the underpinnings of the conversation versus the off-the-shelf solutions in NLP today from a lot of these major companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon who've released APIs that do some pieces of the NLP?
Yeah, so I think we have a plethora of options for these NLP services. I think, for us, I don't know if I would really want to develop in-house just because, there are services, we're using one service right now, an NLP service that just does extremely well. And you also have, 8 other ones that you can try even at this point early on in the bot world.
Have you guys found that that off-the-shelf NLP satisfies all of your use cases or edge cases, or have you had to build out additional trees for decisions that come through?
Yeah, so I mean, we purposely kind of, I may have mentioned a little bit about this before, but we take you down one single path, and the reason, there's many reasons behind that, but one of the reasons is that doing multiple paths, even getting one single path right is really, really hard. Even if you had a full team working on this kind of stuff, it's going to take time to be able to go and branch off in many different ways. So we have a very concise experience. If a user tries to go off of the path, we lead them back into the path because we know that we can control that path. We know that the experience on that path is going to be really incredible. Now, that's not to say that over time we're not going to branch out. But the key that we think is important is, you don't want to start with 20 branches because it's going to be a problem. Your users are going to be very disappointed because you're not going to be able to handle all of those branches, especially in the beginning. So, I think what we do is, it's both the NLP, but it's also our philosophy of kind of doing one thing really, really well.
Gotcha. And just to add some color for the audience, when we talk about branches and decision trees, I think it's important to keep in mind that in a conversation with a human, the conversation can go in any number of directions. And the deeper you go, the more granular or more detail you need to have back there, and you need to understand where this conversation is going, whether it's backtracking, whether it's going deeper down one branch versus another. And so that's actually a very difficult problem to solve, and there's some current limitations around that in the technology today. Would love to also maybe get your take on the idea between using human moderation versus AI, NLP, and the balance between the two. I know, Marah, you guys are sort of straddling the line with some portion human moderation, some portion that you may want to automate. So how do you guys think about that?
I think Jake's point was just 100% spot on in terms of expectation setting and the idea that if a user expects to have just like a full free-flowing conversation with you and you at any point break that promise, it just becomes a terrible experience. But when they are expecting a consistent thing from you, and on our free product, that is a daily messaging experience that has a very specific formula around intention setting and affirmations, we give them the content that they want. And they know that there's a couple of different ways to get there, but to your point, that path is done really well, we think, and it allows them to get what they came for as opposed to trying to get too fancy. That said, I do think NLP, obviously, we're gonna get smarter and smarter with that, and I think there's a great opportunity now to use it for kind of the trolling, right? So for like the jokes and the swear words and all the things, there's such an opportunity to do that in a light, fun way that doesn't detract from your user experience. And then on our paid product, where we're now connecting users via text messaging, again with life coaches, career coaches, and counselors, it's 100% human powered with some onboarding that's bot powered, but really it's that expectation that whenever you need it, you're going to be able to connect with a human. And I think over time for us, and I hope many companies, will see those two things converge, where it is a mix of humans and AI to offer something that is really natural and that does still meet that user expectation of, when is this person going to respond in terms of it being a real person, and when am I just going to know how to get to the content that I want to get in terms of it being a bot.
Gotcha. One other question on the the technology from me, and then we'll launch into a quick Q&A. So I think there's this debate going on within the chatbot ecosystem, between these text purists and folks who are interested in integrating other forms of interaction, whether it's buttons or extra configurations or otherwise. So on the one end of the spectrum, let's say in the scheduling space, you have an X.AI, which has raised tons of money, hired tons of data scientists to really pursue this pure, text-based end-to-end flow, versus many other companies in the scheduling space that also use bots but require a bit more legwork from the user in the beginning to do some configurations or whatnot. And from an engineering perspective, from a build perspective, you can minimize the complexity dramatically by magnitudes, and so I think there's this, balance between the two that will ultimately play out. Would love to get any thoughts from the panel around that, especially given that Facebook, for instance, has integrated buttons into their conversations. And so now I think it's, as a platform, they've made that decision, and it's opened the door to further discussion around how best to create these bots, and what is a true chatbot versus not.
Like, I think part of it is definitely like the expectation setting of one versus the other, right? Like, if you position yourself as, just write in text and then we'll be able to kind of do anything off of that, X.AI, I think, is able to be successful where they are, partially because it's so confined in scope, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna do one thing, I'm gonna try to do this one thing well, and that's scheduling scheduling meetings between people, right? Kind of like the other part of the spectrum is something like Siri or Alexa, where it wants to be a little more open-ended, but the abilities are definitely a little more shallow, right? So it's kind of like your classic like breadth versus depth kind of trade-off there. And then when it comes to these features being supported, I think Dexter is a little unique because we do support multiple platforms, and then we have this philosophy around, like, you should be able to write the kind of like script for a bot once, this kind of like dialogue script, and then be able to launch it on any platform that you want. And then this problem arises always kind of with SMS, right, where it's the most ubiquitous, but also it's like the least sort of like feature full of all these platforms, right? So it's like, how do you do buttons over SMS, And so we have our own solution around that. But like, I think again, coming back to my point of like where the audience is, right? We got to think a lot about that, and then buttons and things certainly are good for like guiding people down this very specific path, right? And so yeah, coming back to like the audience point.
Got it. Yep, go ahead.
I think the buttons versus text has two elements. So first thing is that actual, it depends on the bot. So if that is a bot which is solving a user problem because it's taking the friction from a mobile process you have normally, then buttons, I think, are totally fine, because then the chatbot is a shortcut. I would just want to do the chatbot because it's much faster than Googling this, then going to the website, and then doing something else there with the company. So if it's a shortcut, I think buttons are completely fine. If that is a more conversational and more a product where probably movie recommendation, where I think that's personal, where a conversation makes totally sense, then I think text is better. But in general, I think we have to see what the users will do, because usually that's how you launch a product. You will see with A/B testing what the users is doing, and if they prefer buttons, then I think for sure we will use in the future buttons. If the user engagement is much better with text, then I think we will go for text.
Makes sense. Last question for the whole panel, 10 seconds each. A fun one for you guys before we do some Q&A. Aside from your own company, what do you think, in your opinion, will be the first unicorn chatbot, the first billion-dollar chatbot? Maybe starting with Jake.
Yeah, so, I mean...
10 seconds.
I'm already halfway gone. I really love what Zoom.ai is doing, and there's a very specific reason why. They're not just shuffling you the data that you already know about or that you can find on your LinkedIn or whatever the case may be. They're taking all of the inputs that you're giving them, and they're giving you more based on that. So, they give personality. The personality, if you guys don't know, Zoom.ai is more of a scheduling assistant. They will tell you a little bit about the person that you're meeting with. So they take all of the all of the services that you already use, and then they talk about things like the personality of the person. The point is they're not just kind of shuffling you things that you could already kind of read yourself very quickly. They're making the most of the data that they're giving. It's
a little more, but it's okay. I think
I'm gonna cheat a little bit, but this is based on the people that we work with at Dexter. I think probably the first unicorn chatbot is gonna be not necessarily the bot itself, but it's going to be tied to like a unicorn company where, one of the primary ways that you interact with this product or service is going to be through a conversational like interface. But but the bot itself is not necessarily what makes it a unicorn.
For me, I think it's going to be in personal finance. There's just like such a natural integration with messaging and how you spend your money and when you're not thinking about your money and how you can get reminded about that. And a really great chatbot out there right now is called Trim. I use it and I really like it.
I think it's either finance or food recommendations, something like this, because food is we eat every day. But so far, getting around me, the food recommendation I like, it's still a hustle, an obstacle, a struggle. So I think that's a big opportunity.
Great, thank you. So with that, I guess we can open up to Q&A until they kick us off the stage. Yep, go ahead. So the question is, no one is using Facebook bots today. Why should we invest in these bots, given the lack of adoption?
I think the answer is quite the point I tried to make before. So when you are able to make the discover bots easier at what we did with WhatsApp, we saw the numbers. So if you can transfer these numbers from WhatsApp to Facebook and having there a much better service than we had on WhatsApp, because that was really just broadcasting to people without interactions and so on, I think that will take off very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less about Facebook Messenger and the fact that it's a bot. I think it's more that most of the bots, as Roger had said, just aren't useful. So I think, our service is doing very well. We've become one of the most popular bots out there and most praised. And it's because we understand how to use the medium. It's because we understand that, in our view, it's not going to be chatting with the bot that's going to give value. It's actually, giving value by giving recommendations that are spot on. I think if you're looking at it sort of in the aggregate, I wouldn't tie that down to the fact that it's a bot. I would tie it down to the fact that the products out there that are bots, most of the time aren't getting the job done.
So invest in useful things.
If I could just add one thing to that, I think too, the thinking behind bots along with solving problem really should be platform specific. Facebook is so unpredictable, as we all know. So for us at Shine, we see Facebook as a long-term investment. We're laying something there, the groundwork for the future, but it's not where we're spending the majority of our time. We're spending our time where we can drive traffic and get the most data, to your point, so that we can show that value. And for us, the vast majority of that is SMS. So I think finding the platform where you're able to get the most data the quickest to be able to tell that story and inform other platforms is really useful, and not necessarily trying to make the case on something we know could be huge, but we just don't know yet how they're going to drive discovery to bots on Facebook.
So I've been told we have time for one more question, so make sure it's a good one. Go ahead. So the next panel is actually monetizing bots, but I'll let maybe one of you answer, and then maybe we have time for a quick last question.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, and I think too the combination of humans and tech and messaging really makes it an exciting opportunity for like scale, and then obviously there's different things we can do with monetization on top of that. But for us, I think the ethos is less about the platform itself and bots, and it's more around how are we providing the best user experience. And on the free product, we've talked about kind of that being a trigger for intention setting, and on the paid experience, it's absolutely giving that user a deeper experience.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna try and sneak in one more. Yeah, you got it. Right. So the question is, a lot of the Asian bots are more mature than the U.S. and the ecosystem is more mature. What does that tell us about the U.S. or the rest of the world's ecosystem?
Sure, gonna try this one. I think one kind of fundamental. The answer is like maybe a little, maybe a lot, but probably a little. The one I think big fundamental difference between the Asian market and what we have here in the U.S. is there's not really this concept of like a 2-year phone contract. Like you don't keep a number in a lot of not only like Asian markets but like a lot of other markets out there, right? And so that's why these third-party platforms like WeChat, like Viber, they've all taken off as the primary messaging platform in other countries because your phone number changes like 3 times a year or something like that, right? So I think that is one fundamental force that makes other markets different than the one we have here in the U.S.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much for having us.